Okay, hey. Happy Monday night and welcome to another episode of SuperSoul Boulder. I am Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellowbrick Physical Therapy in Boulder, Colorado, and thank you for coming to tonight's show, where we talk about everything related to mind, body, heart, health, and wellness, which means not just the body, which I love and I've studied for so long, and not just the mind, which runs the show, has us in all these patterns, it gives us our perspectives and our perceptions of life, but also heart, like what your essence, who are you in this world, what are you about? We want to bring it all together and integrate all these things. Hey guys, hey Dan, hey Carlos, great to see you. So tonight we're talking about atrophy. I hope you saw my post earlier. Yes, I've been in this creative mode and I get long-winded. You guys who watch this already know that I get a little long-winded, but I hope it's a little entertaining nonetheless. So, so this got me thinking about atrophy. So in our muscles and in our tissues, if we don't use muscle, it causes the muscle or tissue to waste away, to get smaller, to shrink, for the cells to reabsorb its contents into the body. The body's actually really great at doing this sort of thing. It's just like how your bones reabsorb if you're not putting pressure or force on them, and they grow if you are putting pressure and force on them. It's called Wolff's Law. It's why astronauts and swimmers lose bone density, and why people who lift a lot of weights or are impacting the ground have more bone density. A whole other story about why stenosis happens. Well, that's for another episode. But in muscle, same thing can happen. If we're not putting pressure or force on muscle, then it reabsorbs the contents, the cellular matter, the things that our body needs, reabsorbs that to use it in wherever it's most needed. Hey John. And so the muscle or the tissue will reabsorb so that the body can use what's needed the most. And that usually happens when it comes to muscle when you've been immobilized. So not just from, say, not strength training. I want to just make a distinction here. It's not just from like not lifting weights or not strengthening specifically. That can lead to less weakness, or strength training can lead to more, strength training can lead to more strength, and not strength training can lead to lack of strength. But really, if you've anyone out there who's had a bone fracture or an injury where your ankle or foot's in a cast or your arm's in a cast and you can't even move it, so it's not just atrophy because of lack of weight bearing on the ground. It's also immobilization. So when you lack moving the muscle at all, even in non-weight bearing, so even out of weight bearing, that muscle motion itself can keep your kind of muscle health and function to some degree. And when we don't have that, when you're totally immobilized in a cast or in a boot or on crutches or all those things to let something heal, then the muscles can atrophy. What we call atrophy, which means get smaller. Waste away is kind of a heavy term. And the opposite of that is hypertrophy. So when you strength train and your muscles get bigger, that's called hypertrophy. So the opposite of that is atrophy, where your muscles get smaller, the muscle cell size gets smaller, and then you don't have as much strength and as much function. So after you've spent some time healing that injury and remobilizing, then that strength comes back, and weight bearing and all those things. But the point here is how the disuse, one other point here to make from my nerve focused PT perspective is it's not only disuse. So there are two mechanisms that can lead to atrophy of muscle. One is disuse, so being immobilized, not weight bearing, but also not moving the muscle at all, contracting or expanding. And the other is neurogenic. So if you don't have nerve function to a muscle, it's going to create weakness. That's going to make for the muscle's inability to move properly and have its full function. It probably doesn't happen as quickly as immobilization, where you're not using the muscle at all. But what happens, and why this is interesting for me to think about, and you guys will have to let me know what you think too, is when we don't use an area of the body, it does get weaker. And it's the same thing with areas in your life. that can get weaker or less strong. We can have less attention on them, and we sort of atrophy, right? We atrophy in those areas. And this past year with COVID probably showed a lot of us, a lot of different areas that may have atrophied, but change can show that to us, which makes change itself just a really great thing, even though it can be hard and we may not want it. But if something changes in your life, you may see an area where you have been experienced some atrophy in your life. So maybe you've ended a relationship and now you're spending a lot more time on your own, and this alone muscle is not strong, and so it feels weak and it feels sore and it feels uncomfortable. Just like when you've had a muscle atrophy and you're kind of bringing it back, working it again, it feels sore and uncomfortable. So if we start to take these areas where we've been atrophied, maybe it's alone, maybe it's starting a new relationship and you're like, whoa, I haven't been in a relationship for a while and this muscle's not working that well. Or maybe it's starting a new job where you're like, I haven't used my brain in this way. Or maybe it's some environment, you're at home all the time at a sitting or at a standing desk, or maybe you haven't run, and those muscles, here's the physical part again, your running muscles have atrophied, or your swimming muscles have atrophied. And I think the point I really want to make here, also maybe a few points, but one point is that it's okay to feel that soreness, but also not to jump full force into the thing. If you have an atrophied calf, let's say, it's been immobilized for a really long time, and now you've got to kind of get strength. You want to do that little by little. We don't want to do it all at once. We're going to get really sore. It's going to backfire a little bit. It'll irritate some things that haven't been working for a while. So we want to ease in. You want to take it step by step, one rep at a time. You guys know how much I'm loving rhyming right now. One rep at a time, one step at a time. Because if we go from atrophy and everything feeling really weak and unstable or just uncomfortable, and we try to throw ourselves into this new thing or get all the strength back all at once or start running all at once. I hear this story all the time. People are like, I want to get back into running and I kind of hate it, it's uncomfortable. I'm like, ooh, well, go slowly, do less, go easy, enjoy it, go to places you enjoy, don't go for as long if you haven't for a long time. It's okay to take it slowly, because when you go slowly, you get a chance to look up, right? To see, to redirect, and not feel like you have to follow the momentum. It's kind of like, we've talked about this in the last month too, pacing yourself. Starting a race slowly, or whatever it is, your learning process, whatever it is, starting slowly so you can adjust and look up and look around and know yourself and feel what's going on and make adjustments in real time. So if you have an atrophied muscle or atrophied area of life that you haven't been working much recently, that's okay. Because, we can't work everything all the time. I think it'd be hard to stay balanced if we are keeping everything going all the time. I did that for a really long time, I was trying to keep everything going, and I added, and especially with physical activity, because I really love it. So it's not just running, but swimming and pool running and Pilates and yoga and biking and, all these things. And sometimes it's too much to keep up with. So I think it's also important to know that when you become aware of an area in your life where you where you notice you've atrophied, where you notice, oh wow, this is uncomfortable, I'm not used to this. It's okay, because here is that starting line, that starting point where you get to build capacity. But let's think of it like that. It's building capacity, not just building strength. Strength can be misconstrued as an overpowering kind of thing. And even in the body, strength can act as a stiffness can act as a false strength. Or strengthening can act as a kind of a false strength where you haven't actually dealt with some of the underlying patterns, some of the underlying issues, and then going and hitting it hard or going after it. For some of us who are highly motivated and use that outlet, it can hover over some other areas and aspects that will then atrophy. So in this line of thought, if you get too focused in one area or one or two areas, you run the risk of letting a lot of other areas atrophy. And I think it's really important here to decide and discover what areas of life are the most important areas maybe for you right now. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, or maybe it's 1 that you prioritize. And making sure to keep flexing the muscles in those areas. And again, noticing what is becoming atrophied if you're focusing so much on these. You know, maybe it's relationship, maybe it's your health, maybe it's your, life's work or passion or your creativity or art, whatever that is. And that can be expressed in lots of ways, right? Like parenting and like your work. So we want to make sure to not run away from those places that may have atrophied, but to lean into them, and then little by little let yourself build capacity there. For me, physical activity and fitness and running was easy for me to go and do. Meditation and stillness and slowing down was a lot harder for me to do. And just like a muscle that can atrophy, stopping that for a while or kind of falling out of the rhythm of stillness and of meditation can sort of feel like atrophy in that area. It can feel harder to have the endurance of sitting and staying with something. Staying with your experience is very powerful. You build a capacity for staying with your current experience, whatever that may be, including the hard feelings, the emotions, the areas, the places in yourself you may not want to look at. But this is where we can build strength and capacity and hypertrophy those muscles. As in build those muscles, make those muscles bigger and stronger over time. But without the pushing, I would add, without the let's hit it hard all at once. Not that you guys all are, just our culture really supports that, right? Hit it hard all at once, go stronger, go harder. That could be physically, that could be in work, that could be in life, it could be keeping up with the Joneses, whatever that is. You know, that doesn't let those ways of going towards something don't necessarily allow you to build strength or build capacity, because it's coming from an externally oriented goal or situation, right? So what is it in you? What areas in you right now do you notice are atrophied? Do you notice have become weak? Do you notice that it's uncomfortable when you go into that? If you look into that place, or if you, deal with that person, or go walk every day, or, write, or start meditating, which you might not be used to. So there are lots of areas, or eating healthy things all the time, committing to something healthy. So any disuse of these areas in your body or in your life can create a weakness and atrophy. And again, that's not bad or wrong. It's just once you become aware and notice that, then you have the ability, the opportunity to build capacity, to build strength in that muscle. The muscle of awareness is a really powerful and potent one. The more you bring yourself back to the present moment at any given time, like right now, right here, in this very moment when you hear me say that, and you feel your feet on the ground and you notice your seat on the chair, and you recognize that you're hearing what I'm saying, and then maybe something comes to mind, some area that you've allowed to atrophy. And this isn't a place to judge yourself for that, or maybe it's hard to see that, but opening that question might allow you to see it at some point, maybe this week or later tonight. And then not worrying that it's become atrophied. Sometimes, like in the body, we need to immobilize the ankle, the foot, if we've had a fracture. We need that to heal. It does help to be able to keep moving the muscle a little bit, but in some cases, because muscles are attached to bones, it's going to be really hard to heal that area if we're continuing to move it and stress it and create tension and create inflammation and things like that. So sometimes we need to immobilize that, or sometimes we are unconscious to the areas that we're immobilizing, to the areas that we're avoiding, or to the areas that we don't know we need to work on, or that we have weaknesses in. But it's really rewarding, right? To kind of look at the dark places, or look at the weaknesses, or look at the areas you haven't been spending time in, and lean into those a bit. And little by little build capacity, little by little build strength, little by little just become aware of what's going on there. And then you really don't have to muscle it out. In fact, when it comes to that example of a muscle that's atrophied, we're using the ankle and foot as an example, you know, you want to bring that back gently and over time. You start by non-weight bearing muscle activity, and it comes back kind of quickly. And then you add weight bearing naturally when the time is right, and then you add some strengthening for all the muscles around that area. So the same thing as in these areas of life. You take it little by little. Don't be surprised if there's some soreness. Don't let it keep you from kind of working into it a little bit, but with mindfulness, with the ability to see what, feel what's there, feel what's happening, and you gather information that way. John, I'm seeing some of your comments, but I'll have to write later. And you're talking about upper body is our heart, so upper body strength is for hearts too. Yeah, I love that. Strength. I think our hearts can be strengthened both physically and emotionally. You know, letting your heart be strengthened through endurance activities, but also through letting yourself feel it. Letting yourself feel what your heart actually feels like in that area, not the physical heart, the heart center. Letting yourself feel what your heart feels like at any given moment. Sometimes it's really elusive to us. It was for me for a very long time. And then being able to feel it can help you direct you, but also you just build capacity in being able to sense that area. If you sense your feet on the floor right now, you build a capacity for being able to sense your feet on the floor. Very simple, right? And that is a strength. That is like flexing a muscle. It's kind of like when you meditate or bring yourself back to the present moment in whatever way you do, through breath, through sensing your feet, through sitting quietly for 5 minutes or 30 minutes, that actually creates physiological changes in your brain that allow you to do that more easily, like strengthening a muscle. Every repetition that you do that you bring yourself back to the moment, that you flex a muscle, that you lean into a discomfort or an uncomfortable area, that strengthens that capacity, that builds your capacity to be with that area. And in doing so, you, so to speak, hypertrophy, right? The opposite of atrophy. So rather than weakening or wasting away of the cells, you build the muscle cells, you build all the organelles that are in it, the proteins, the cytoplasm, and in the areas of your life, you build capacity for being with that, for learning, for growing, for changing, for adapting, for developing. And what is life if not an ongoing development of personal growth? So I wish for you to not let these especially important areas of your life that nourish you or enrich you, not to let those atrophy. Important people in your life, important situations, or inner peace, inner knowledge, to not let those areas in particular atrophy. And the physical body is certainly one of my favorite things to keep strong and well and healthy, and that's really important, of course. And it's such a great metaphor for the other areas of our life and the ways in which we can build strength and capacity, just like building a muscle. So my invitation for you this week is to simply become aware of any areas that feel uncomfortable, like you've been atrophied and that you're, building back some muscle in that area, and to let yourself lean into that a little bit. gather more strength and more capacity, and not shy away or run away if you feel discomfort, which is really easy to do, I think, for a lot of us. And if you have a muscle that's atrophied, you can strengthen, but if strengthening is only getting you so far, then there may be a neurogenic component leading to that, which is my favorite type of problem to solve. So as always, if you have any questions or comments or things that came to mind during this talk, please write and comment and let me know you're here. If you're watching the replay, thanks so much for tuning in. I love having you here, and please would join me every Monday night for SuperSoul Boulder. I'm Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy, and I love hearing your thoughts and whatever's come to mind on this matter. Do let me know, and let me know how I can help you with your body or otherwise. I'm here, I'm available, and I wish you much strength and capacity in all areas of life. Take care, and I'll see you next Monday.